Or go ahead and get started. So Kathy, all yours.
Yep. So make sure. All right, so I guess we'll get started. Welcome everyone for, I guess this is number 3 of our seminar series. Is that right? 2 or 3, something like that, of our seminar series for the fall of 2021. And I am just tickled. I mean, I truly sincerely mean that, to be able to introduce today's speaker, Kelly Higgins. Kelly is one of our homegrown. I feel in a way like a proud parent because I have many, many fond memories of Kelly in my office, talking about careers, talking about schedules, etc. But she's one of our nutritional sciences grads. She graduated with a dual major in biochemistry and nutritional sciences in 2014. And on top of that, she minored in food science, and which, kind of just resonates with everyone since we're now merged with food science, Kelly. Our department has moved over to CAFNR. We're now part of CAFNR, and we've merged with food science. So, so here's an example of colleagues of someone who did both nutrition science and food science. So I think you'll find her story very interesting. A little bit more about Kelly. She's currently a clinical nutrition research scientist with training in the areas of nutrition science, food science, and public health, as well as experience in evaluating relationships between diet and health. She's a research scientist at the USDA ARS Food Components and Health Laboratory, which is in Beltsville. It's the Beltsville Human Nutrition Research Center. Kelly received, as I mentioned, her dual bachelor's degree in nutritional sciences and biochemistry from here at Mizzou in 2014. And then she went on to Purdue University to earn her doctoral degree, as well as a Master of Public Health. Dr. Higgins currently, her research at the FCHL, that is the Food Components and Health Laboratory, investigates the role of sensory properties and palatability of the diet on body composition and ingestive behavior. Kelly also previously worked as a senior scientist at Exponent Inc., a scientific consulting company. And there she led systematic reviews on the health benefits of dietary exposures, as well as conducted research to determine usual food and nutrient intake and nutrient adequacies based on NHANES data. And I believe, Japna, you were in the same lab, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a lot of connections here, Kelly, and a very warm Mizzou welcome to you. And I believe your title of your talk today, I'm going to pull it up here, is a discussion on nutrition science careers outside of academia. And I'm sure the students in particular are really excited to hear what you had to share with them. I'll hand it over to you.
Great, thank you for that introduction. Let me share my screen. Are you able to see my screen or?
No, not as yet.
Okay, here we go. All right.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. Okay, so thank you for that introduction. I'm super excited to give you just a little bit of background on the career path I've taken after Mizzou and what really led me to my current position at the Beltsville Human Nutrition Research Center. So as Dr. Peterson mentioned, I went to Mizzou. My dad went to Mizzou. My sisters went to Mizzou. We're a Mizzou family. I grew up in Jefferson City. And I really loved the university and my experience there. I did my bachelor's degree in nutritional science and biochemistry and really loved how I could kind of learn about the nutrition side of things, but also really learn the nitty-gritty biochemical pathways that were also ongoing. And so I really feel like the then CAFNR and HES now joint department is really such an excellent collaboration, and really kind of hoping you guys the best with that future. So yeah, after Mizzou, and many long conversations with Dr. Peterson about what I should do, I really settled on deciding to go to Purdue to study ingestive behavior. That's where I met Japna and really kind of developed the tools I wanted to learn and study how people eat, what they eat, and when they eat it. I also got my master's in public health there. And then from that point worked at a scientific consulting company called Exponent. Really kind of further fine-tuned my skills in data analysis and systematic reviewing. And then now my current role as a research nutritionist at the USDA is really kind of the end goal that I kind of had for myself, or I at least currently have for myself. So kind of outlining in this way, it seems like it was very clear-cut, linear path that I took. But it really was not this way. I had a lot of these like, what now moments. I've done my bachelor's degree. What do I do now? I did my PhD. What do I do now? And so I really kind of just want to give you just a little background of like how these what now moments really shaped who I am as a scientist and have led to where I am today. So kind of like I said, my first what now moment, I decided that I wanted to go to Purdue University, work with Rick Mattis, and really learn the skills I needed to study ingestive behavior. I knew early on that this was a passion of mine. I found it so interesting. I was reading about it in my free time. This was definitely something I wanted to pursue as a career. So one of the interesting tools that you can use to study ingestive behavior is low-calorie sweeteners, because they contribute sweetness without the calories. And so while at Purdue, my dissertation focused on low-calorie sweeteners and how they affect body weight and ingestive behaviors when consumed long-term. So really the focus of my work was on how sweeteners are different from each other. They're all sweet and they have negligible calories. But when you look at them, they have very different structures. Some are dipeptides, some are very complex structures. These differences in structures affect how they bind to the sweet taste receptor that's found not only in the oral cavity, but throughout the gastrointestinal tract. Their structure affects how they're broken down, if they are broken down. It affects if they're absorbed and excreted in the urine, or if they're excreted in the feces. So these compounds are very different from each other, but kind of to date, there wasn't much research to show whether or not these differences actually had any sort of clinical implications. So the focus of my dissertation was to contrast the effects of consumption of 4 common low-calorie sweeteners consumed in the US diet on body weight, body composition, ingestive behaviors, and glycemia when consumed long-term, meaning 12 weeks among adults with overweight and obesity. So in this study, which was really, the goal of the study is to learn skills in ingestive behavior and how to run a clinical study. So this study was a parallel arm design in which we recruited 154 participants to consume 1 of 5 sweeteners for 12 weeks. The low-calorie sweetener beverages contributed negligible energy, while the sucrose beverage contributed between 400 to 560 kcals a day. The difference in kcals was due to the differences in amount of sweetener we gave based on the individual's body weight at baseline. And so just an overview of our study design, we had participants come in for baseline measures in which we measured their body weight, their body composition. We had them complete an oral glucose tolerance test, complete a series of 3 days in which they completed 24-hour dietary recalls, and wore an accelerometer so that we can measure their energy expenditure. They completed appetite logs in which they rated their feelings of hunger, fullness, desire to eat every hour for a 24-hour period. We also had them collect their urine over a 24-hour period at 4 times throughout the trial. We did this because we put a compound called PABA, or paraaminobenzoic acid, into the beverages. This compound is unmetabolized and it is excreted in the urine. So it was kind of our way of measuring compliance throughout the intervention. And because we're looking at ingestive behaviors, just knowing we're measuring behavior can actually influence how an individual responds to a trial. So we told our participants we were looking at the effect of sweet beverages on fine motor control. So every time they came in for their body weight measurement, we had them complete a series of questionnaires and measurements of their fine motor control. So then we had the participants consume the beverage for 12 weeks and completed these same measurements throughout the trial. And for the focus of this presentation today, I don't want to go too much into the nitty-gritty detail of the findings. I just want to keep things big picture. So what we found in the study is that despite the fact that all low-calorie sweeteners contribute negligible energy, they do not have the same effect on body weight. When individuals consumed sucrose, which is just table sugar, they gained weight during the trial. That was expected. We're having them consume 400 to 560 kcals a day. What was interesting was that individuals who consumed saccharin, a low-calorie sweetener, experienced body weight gain that was no different from the sucrose group. That's that pink line there. The other sweeteners had no effect on body weight. However, individuals who consumed the sucralose solution, that yellow line, they had a smaller change in body weight than the individuals consuming all other sweeteners in this study. So kind of our key takeaway here is all low-calorie sweeteners are not the same. And really can have different effects on body weight when consumed chronically. And while running this study, it wasn't just to study the sweeteners per se. It was to develop these skills I needed to know how to run clinical trials, to develop adequate, appropriate study design. Coming into this, would I have ever known to include a biomarker to track compliance? Like, probably not. So this was a really valuable experience that helped me not only conduct clinical trials in the future, but to be able to critically evaluate clinical trials in the literature. So after I successfully defended my dissertation, I kind of had a what now moment. I did my PhD. What do I do now? I knew I loved the research I was doing. However, I wasn't super passionate about teaching. I felt really safe in academia. I knew I liked it, but I'd been in school since I was in kindergarten. I kind of wanted to see what was out there in the outside world, what was going on in the food industry or in other sectors. So thankfully, I was kind of thinking about this the whole time. And about my second year into my PhD, I decided that I wanted to also pursue a Master of Public Health. And I wanted to do this so that I could also develop the skills to not only just apply this information I know about nutrition, but apply it at a larger, more public health global scale. So after I finished my PhD, I had 1 semester left to complete the remaining competencies of my Master's of Public Health. So to give you a little background, you have to complete a practicum, which is like a practical experience as part of your Master's of Public Health. I went and worked with an organization called Catholic Relief Services, in which I went to Tanzania and taught soybean farmers how to make various soy products at the household level. I enjoyed the experience, but development wasn't for me. I really liked looking at obesity and ingestive behaviors and solutions for these problems. So for the remainder of my Master of Public Health, I kind of focused on two kind of specific skill sets that I thought I could apply to my future career in the nutrition and public health field. So what I did was I completed these two independent studies. I wanted skills that
Sorry to interrupt. I think we lost your screen.
Okay, I was wondering if that happened.
We can see the notes page and it's back on your, I think, slide number 2, but.
Okay. Let's see, how about now?
No, still not.
If you go to the lower right-hand corner and click on the tiny little slide or projector screen on the lower bar,
Um,
the little bitty icons in the lower right-hand corner on PowerPoint.
let's see. Nope, that is not it.
Do you
Yeah,
have
one more.
multiple screens in front of you?
Yeah, I think that's what happened. One of the screens is making my face blue, so I think I changed it. Okay, let's try this again.
It's still on the,
Still another one.
yeah.
Okay, let me try one more thing. I'm really sorry about this. I should not have played with it.
We could see it, and then in the middle, all of a sudden it went
Okay.
away. So
Can you see it now?
it's still on that notes page. Trying to see if you, what if you disconnect the other monitor?
Yeah.
Just use one.
Okay. Okay, how about now?
Okay, yes.
Okay,
Perfect.
oh my
Thank you.
goodness, I'm so sorry. All right. Oh, is it? Let me turn that off. Okay. Okay, so I jumped a little too far ahead. Okay, so two things I also wanted to make sure I got out of my Master's of Public Health were two very specific skills, which, as I was doing it, I didn't quite understand the importance, but in hindsight, I really saw these as two kind of pivotal skills that really had shaped my career trajectory. So one of the skills that I developed while doing my Master of Public Health was systematic reviewing and conducting a meta-analysis. So for this specific project, I worked with 10 other students and developed kind of a curriculum in which we could learn how to do systematic reviews. We worked with a librarian to help us learn how to develop search terms. We worked with a statistician to see, how were we supposed to analyze the data. We went through many series of iterations of developing templates to really appropriately compile and extract information from these studies. It was there's definitely a learning curve involved in this. But knowing how to conduct systematic reviews are something that I really think, at least in my consulting career, I used on an almost daily basis. The second thing that I decided I wanted to kind of skill build was learning how to manage large data sets. With running my clinical trial, we were getting a lot of data from certain measures. Having a person wear an accelerometer that captures movement every minute for a 3-day period ends up with hundreds of thousands of lines of data. And I really kind of felt I didn't quite have the adequate skills to manage it and to manage it efficiently and accurately. So kind of to learn how to use larger data sets, I decided I wanted to work and know how to do kind of different nutrient analyses using NHANES data. So I worked with Reagan Bailey at Purdue to kind of just really get the background on how to use NHANES. So we specifically worked on an analysis looking at different definitions of what is a snack and looking at snack frequency and the association with body weight and adiposity. So really just learning these two very valuable skills, I really think kind of set me up for kind of success no matter what career path I was going to go down. So again, I kind of reached another what now moment. And while I was completing these different public health practicums, I was also applying to jobs. I was applying to jobs in the food industry, in government. I applied to a couple postdocs, and really wasn't quite finding anything that I felt like was me. And kind of during that job search process, I came across a job for a public health nutrition scientist. And I felt like there was no better job title for what I was looking for. So this was a job at Exponent, which is a scientific consulting company. And so starting in 2019, I took a job at Exponent. The chemical regulatory division is based in Washington, D.C. So I moved from the Midwest to Washington, D.C. And really it's people kind of joke about consulting because no one really knows what it is. And the reason it's so difficult to describe is because, there's for multiple reasons. One is there are tons of different types of consultants. Some people are consultants for lobbyists. Some are consultants for nonprofits. Some are consultants for the food industry. My specific job was more on the food regulatory side of consulting. So how food companies can kind of get their food products on the market and make sure that they are approved by the FDA. Another reason it's a little difficult to describe is because you sign an NDA with many of these clients. So it's really sometimes hard to disclose what specific projects I work on. And also at the end of the day, like as a consultant, you wear many different hats. What makes a strong consultant is someone who has a good background in the topic, for this specifically is nutrition, but also has strong skills in problem solving. Can you take something that you know nothing about, learn about it, dissect it systematically, and give an answer to your client? So kind of the different types of projects that I worked on kind of fall into these following buckets. So I worked a lot on health claim substantiations. So for these, it was usually a food company would come to us and they would say, hey, we have this food. We want to make a claim about glycemic response or body weight or blood pressure. Tell us if we can make this claim. Tell us if FDA is going to come after us. And what we would do is just a systematic review. Is there evidence that this food is related to this outcome? Kind of ends with either going to the client and saying, yes, there's strong evidence here. You can make a valid claim. no, there is no evidence. If anything is in the wrong direction, you cannot make this claim. Back to the drawing board. Or, maybe there's just not enough evidence out there. It's very unclear. Maybe you should conduct a clinical trial to see if it really is something that you want to pursue, if you want to make that claim. The other realm is more risk assessment. So a lot of these are submissions that are made to FDA that says this product is safe. These tend to be referred to, generally recognized as safe or GRAS notices. And from these, you kind of take the product that the company wants to have approval for, and you dissect it and determine all possible adverse outcomes. You kind of play devil's advocate to say, here's why this is safe, here's why it's not safe, here's the level at which it's safe. And these assessments usually include a component that has a food or nutrient intake assessment. That's done using NHANES typically. The client says, we want to apply this ingredient to all these different applications. How much does the general population tend to consume if that were the scenario? And lastly, in consulting, for my specific group I worked with, we actually got to do some research. We'd apply for different RFPs just as you would in academia. And they were able to kind of answer some of the questions that we as a group felt like were important research questions to kind of be put in the field. So it's kind of easiest to explain these examples in a context. So this is some information that is publicly available, so I can talk to you about. So for this particular GRAS notice, the client wanted to take this white mucilage that surrounds different cocoa beans, which they refer to as like a cocoa pulp, which is usually a byproduct of, chocolate production. They wanted to take that, and since it's very high in sugar, they wanted to use it and sell it for different applications, such as certain beverages, certain jellies. So what we did is, we got the chemical composition of this pulp. We looked at all the macronutrients, micronutrients, organic acids, and really kind of pieced out if there's any areas of potential concern. This pulp had high levels of polyphenols. What level would be considered safe? Were they exceeding it? Were they below it? And the way you do that is looking at estimated daily intake at these most extreme scenarios, which is done using NHANES data. So after 2 years of doing this, I had another what now moment. I knew I was enjoying what I was doing, but really the projects would, as soon as you got down to the nitty-gritty detail, that kind of tended to be what the client wanted. You didn't get to keep digging further. You had to kind of jump from project to project, which is good if you love variety, but not so great if you want to have that really kind of like intimate relationship with a research question. You're working on so many projects, and it's really constantly, there's always something else to do. So I really kind of made me realize I really want to go back to studying ingestive behavior. I really want to answer the questions that I want to answer, not necessarily what my client thinks that we should answer. So with that, I was fortunate to be accepted for a position as a research nutritionist at the Food Components and Health Lab, which is based in Beltsville. So that's a suburb of DC. I started this past April during COVID. So I can tell you a bit about what my job role is supposed to be versus what it's actually been for the past couple months. So what we do at our facility at Beltsville is we have a large controlled feeding facility. That's kind of our bread and butter, is being able to run many participants in a controlled feeding environment. They come in, they have breakfast, lunch, take dinner to go. And we answer many different research questions related to food components and health. Specifically, I was hired on to work on a study on dietary sweetness and whether manipulations of the sweetness of the diet influences sweetness perception and preference long term. But again, while we have COVID and it's really not a safe scenario to have people coming into the facility, especially when our sensory testing paradigms include individuals taking a sample, swishing it around their mouth, and spitting it in a cup with COVID potentially going everywhere. So that project is currently on hold. So I've been able to kind of use the different skills that I've been developing in my current roles to really help me, apply it to what we're doing here with this clinical trial. So to just kind of give you a brief overview of those specific projects, it goes back to sweetness. There must be something about sweetness that I'm drawn to, or people see me drawn to. But I really think it's an interesting topic to study. So as I mentioned, what we are doing at the USDA in collaborations with Momanel Chemical Senses, which is based in Philadelphia. They're kind of a private research group that does sensory. They are the go-to for sensory. So what this study is designed to do kind of builds off some previous research that's been conducted to see how changes in the sweetness of the diet influences their preference and perception of sweet foods. So what we get to do in this project, once we get going, is we'll assign our participants to one of 4 interventions. One of these interventions is going to reduce the sugar content of the diet to about 6% of total energy from added sugars. The next type of intervention will be a gradual reduction in sugar. So we want to kind of compare, would a rapid or a gradual reduction be more beneficial for something like preference? The goal is, the goal / hypothesis is if you reduce the sugar in the diet, individuals will hopefully prefer lower sugar, consume less added sugar, which has more potential for excess energy, could potentially help with weight maintenance if consumed long term. And the other arm of the study comes back to my low calorie sweeteners work. So what if we replace the sugar with low calorie sweeteners? So we maintain the sweetness, but take away that actual sugar. Does that have an influence on perception or preference? So it really gets more into the question of sweetness or sweetener. And then also we can have a control group, which will maintain level of high added sugar in their diet. So participants will consume this diet for 3 months and then kind of go back to their free feeding diet. This free feeding period will kind of allow us to see if these changes in perception or preference are short term or only maintained if an individual maintains their diet. And it will also allow us to see, does that translate? If we observe a change in preference, does that translate to actually choosing lower sugar foods? And so really, this project will help me, further develop those clinical trial skills and really allows me to apply what I learned back in my PhD. But we also have 2 other ongoing projects, one of which is looking at an evidence map. So it's kind of getting at the latter of that question is, what's the influence of dietary sweetness, regardless of the sweetener, on body weight related outcomes? So we are conducting a project that is with IFANS, which is formerly ILSI, to conduct an evidence map to see the availability of the literature on sweetness and body weight related outcomes. So an evidence map is a little different than a systematic review. It's more designed to look at the breadth of the evidence out there, look at more wider research questions, and identify gaps as opposed to a systematic review, which it includes a little bit more of a quality evaluation. So how strong is the evidence versus is there just anything out there? So that kind of gets itches my systematic review itch, scratches that itch. And also currently working on another project, which we're doing with the other group that's in Beltsville, the Food Surveys Research Group. So this group is a little bit more of the minds behind the what we eat in American component of NHANES. So Alana and Donna, they really kind of help develop that database of what's a representative food when you're conducting an NHANES analysis. And we're working with them to see, if potentially reducing the sugar of the diet does influence preference, what should be target foods? What are the foods that people are consuming that aren't meeting the recommended level of sugar? Where should we target it? Should we focus it on sugar sweetened beverages? Is it more baked goods? Is candy contributing? This analysis really is just kind of descriptive of what are potential target areas, or if we find that reduced sugar or sweetness can be beneficial for body weight related outcomes, what foods should we be targeting? I don't have any results to present for you today, but really kind of the secret sauce is it's sugar sweetened beverages. Coffee, tea, a big contributor too, but those lid sugars seem to be pretty problematic. So, just to kind of wrap things up, like I said, it's not a linear trajectory from finishing your bachelor's, finishing your PhD to getting to your end goal. It's definitely more of a mess, a little bit more of a map. So if you're in that situation of like, what now? What should I be doing now? Or even if you're not at that critical point, it's something to be thinking about. I kind of find it's more of like a different map. Like I kind of think of those BuzzFeed quizzes. What's the best fit for you based on your interests and your life goals? So kind of for me, what drove me was like, do I like research? Yes, I love research, but I really didn't want to do academia. So it's really, really kind of a mess. So, there's many different ways that you can get to all these different industries. And, for some people, academia is for them, but there's very few academic positions. If you really want it, you can get it, but it might not be for everybody. Same can be said about the food industry. Some people love working in food. They love coming up with new food product and more nutritious food. But not everyone wants to make the next greatest granola bar. It's not for everybody. And this kind of just is because my brainstorm of what kind of got me where I'm at today. And I think I kind of hit all these different industries at some point or another, and really led me to where I am. So with that, I will take any questions that you might have for me.
Hey, thank you so much. I really like this last slide of yours, especially where you said you enjoy diving into multi-year quests to answer research questions. Yep, that academia is for you.
Yeah, I spent way too much time on this, but I was having a lot of fun.
This is really good. Would you mind sharing this with me after the presentation? Just
Sure.
I'll send this out to the students so they can have this as a
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, so plenty of questions here. We'll just scroll up. All right, so the first question is from Dusty. I think this is related to the first project that you presented, and that's your sucralose study, I think. Did the participants consume exclusively the assigned sweetener, or did they add it to the normal diet?
What we had, background, the participants that we recruited to study were considered like low calorie sweetener naive. So while they could be consuming sucrose in the diet, they were not low-calorie sweetener consumers. We gave no instruction for how they should incorporate the beverages into the diet, because we wanted to see, that was something we wanted to measure. We wanted to see, were they adding these beverages, in between meals? Were they adding them to meals, or were they swapping something out?
Can you stop your the slide?
Screen share.
Oh, there you are. Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the next question was from Kaylin. Said there's an interesting document series on Netflix over the different varieties of sweeteners and their origins. Do you know which one it's talking about?
I don't think so.
Or maybe this is more like a more statement. I think I know which one I don't recall the name specifically about it, but I'm gonna look it up later.
No, yeah, I'd be interested in seeing that.
All right, the next question is from James. He says, I'm in my second year of my PhD, and I feel the same way in regards to teaching and just the rigor of a job in academia. How did you navigate opportunities in the industry, and how did they present themselves?
Yeah, so I think the kind of the best way to like get yourself out there and navigating jobs, I've kind of found was just talking to people and just searching, job websites. It's for me, it was very easy to pick out the jobs I didn't like, and I knew what I wasn't looking for, than it was to look for things that I really knew that I wanted. I was also very involved in kind of the food science end of things. And I think that that's something that really differs with nutrition. And think you all will benefit from joining CAFNR is the nutrition side of things doesn't always know much about the big food companies. There's the big food, there's like, Frito-Lay, there's General Mills, there's the big food companies, but there's also the food ingredient manufacturers. And those are a completely other, area that are recruiting nutrition scientists. So this is companies like ADM, Cargill, these different ingredient manufacturers, they do a lot with nutrition. So, being involved in different organizations, whether that's ASN or IFT, IFT is great. Going to those conferences, you see all the food companies, who's hiring, what they specialize in.
Yeah. How did you, I'm curious to know, like, how exactly did you go about applying for these jobs? Did you have a network already to work with, when you're transitioning from academia to industry and then industry to the government?
Honestly, like I had some network that was in the food industry. I was in the food science department at Purdue. So a lot of my friends went off to work for food companies. I had quite a few friends at Pepsi, which, at first I was like, oh, Pepsi, I don't know if I want to work for a soda company, but they own so many food brands. They own Tropicana, they own Quaker Oats. There's a lot of food that's involved in that as well. So kind of just, I had that network of people from school, but, also, you kind of have to network with people you don't know as well. And I made quite a few cold calls. I had some people who are very influential who I met a couple of times, who set me up with all their friends who gave me opportunities to network. One in particular, she's a professor at George Washington University. She gave me plenty of names of people at NIH, and I just kind of set up meeting after meeting, talking to them, seeing about what jobs there were. So yeah, it was really just networking, and it's always an unexpected people who kind of put you in the right place.
Yeah, and that's important for the students to know. It's really about putting yourself out there. It's uncomfortable to make those cold calls and sending those cold emails, but you never know. It might just work out. So
Yeah. And it won't sometimes, and it'll be really awkward, but I've definitely had a couple times, I've gone up to somebody and said, "Oh, I love your research. I've read all your papers," and they could care less. Other people are like, "Well, let me give you an internship." It's the whole gamut.
Right. What's the worst that can happen? They'll just say no.
Yeah.
Right. So we have to get comfortable with hearing no as well. And that was helpful. Okay, so back to your science. John asks, if the change in body weight from artificial sweeteners isn't directly caused by increased energy from the drinks themselves, what do you think led to the weight gain? And do you think it was metabolic or more psychosomatic?
That's a great question, and I don't have a good answer for you. We did include a couple of measures to kind of look at the different potential mechanisms. And so one of the things we looked at was energy intake from the 24-hour recalls. And we did find that individuals who consumed saccharin, which is the pink, the sweet and low, the one that led to weight gain, they had higher energy intake than the sucralose arm, which is the one that led to weight loss. And there was also a difference in their hunger ratings. That's not a great exact mechanism that's going on, but it kind of does indicate it's, probably not something like, like a difference in energy expenditure or oxidation, could be, I'm totally speculating. But yeah, one of the other mechanisms is kind of this, these different cephalic phase responses. And so some of the things that they've measured in animals, these rat studies seem to show this kind of uncoupling between sweetness and body weight with low calorie sweeteners. All these animal studies are done on rats. Rats can't taste aspartame, so they use saccharin. So all these studies in rats are saying their low calorie sweeteners cause issues are done with saccharin, which we observe there's body weight gain. So maybe it's saccharin, like specifically. It's hard to say. There's not quite enough evidence out there. So sorry, I don't have a better answer for you.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I remember when your study was published, it created quite a stir in the scientific as well as the non-scientific community.
Yeah.
Okay, so another question related to TAD, Megan asks, in terms of the impact of artificial sweeteners and weight gain, she's heard multiple times that artificial sweeteners make people eat more. Well, obviously no one's forced to eat more, but she wants to understand if the chemicals probably instigate cravings for sweet food, and have you investigated the extent of these mechanisms?
So yeah, that kind of gets back to the kind of my second answer. I think, you've got to look at the sweetener. You got to look specifically at the sweetener. And I think that's the only way that you can answer that question, because we're talking about sucralose, it's completely different. They have, lower, kind of desired, I believe, I don't want to speak, it was either desire to eat or hunger than saccharin. So like maybe saccharin is creating these cravings. Something that we've kind of hypothesized too is saccharin has this bitter taste. Like it's sweet and low, it's the pink packet, it's really bitter. There's a chance that people drank the beverage, it left a bad taste in their mouth, and they ate something to kind of cleanse that taste. That could be happening too. It's hard to say.
Yeah, and also, just the taste or status could influence how people actually perceive these sweeteners as well. For example, to me, they all taste the same. I don't perceive any bitterness in any of these artificial sweeteners, but if my sister were to eat, consume, I think it's the maybe saccharin one, and even aspartame, she can perceive the bitterness And she's like, no, I don't like it. So for some of you, you might be thinking that, oh, I don't know how other people can drink something like that. It's disgusting, but it's like, it goes back to what you said. It's just how people perceive it. Related question to this, could you talk more about the cephalic phase responses, just for people who don't know exactly what those are?
Sure. Okay, so the cephalic phase responses are these physiological responses that happen that kind of prepare the body for an incoming caloric load. So it's kind of like this, like Pavlov's dog. So like, the dogs, when they heard the bell, and they smelled the meat, they started salivating, even though they didn't get the meat yet. It's kind of like that salivary response when you smell delicious baked bread. And so for sweeteners, it's supposedly the taste of sweetness could potentially cause this small increase in insulin that would help kind of prepare the body for this incoming carbohydrate load. That's kind of the theory. It's very difficult to measure. Jopna can talk more about this than I can, because I've never actually attempted to do it, but I know there's, you have to have these measurements at very, very specific timeframes in order to capture that cephalic phase insulin response, because it's so small. So yeah, they're kind of these responses that just prepare the body for an incoming, metabolic load.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, the media will conflate those responses with actually just confusing that with, well, if somebody had an artificial sweetener drink and, their blood insulin went up, even though it might have been just very, very little amounts, and that could just have been a cephalic phase response. So not necessarily, post-consumption. Very interesting. Thank you. All right, so Dusty again asked, do you think that skill building you did post your PhD is necessary for applying for jobs outside of academia?
Depends. So for me, I wanted a career outside of academia that was still research focused. The specific consulting I did was very research heavy. It was a scientific consulting company. Different consulting, different industries are going to value different skills. If you want to go into something like food product development, more experience in like food science, I was just talking to Dr. Peterson about I was on a food product development team. Food companies love that stuff. They love people being involved in these different food product development. So it's very specific in what you're interested in pursuing. Even in something like government, I do government research. There is government who does more policy, who do, very, very different things than what I do. So they're going to all require very, very different skills. So for me specifically, the data analysis and systematic reviewing was very valuable for me. But it might not be, depending on what specific role you want to play.
At what point in your graduate career did you realize that academia was not for you?
I was seeing a lot of, to be completely honest, I was seeing a lot of my people I knew go into these postdoc roles that didn't have a clear insight. There are very few academic positions out there. It's an incredibly competitive process. And I started kind of doing the math, and it was like, okay, so I have my PhD advisor, that he's going to need someone to replace him. So one of his students is going to be a professor. I've got a good PhD advisor. So maybe he has 2 or 3 people who would replace him. Maybe the field's growing, so maybe 4 of all of his students would become professors to kind of fill that role. And kind of doing the math, it was like, well, he's got about or 5 or 6 that are already in those roles. So, that's, it's not perfect math, but, it's incredibly competitive. And some people's comparative advantage is they like to teach and they want to take on this teaching roles. And that was not my comparative advantage. I wanted to see what else was out there, and I'm very glad I did.
Yeah, you know how they say alternative careers outside of academia. Actually, academia should be the alternative career, because most PhDs don't end up in academia. They end up in industry or the government or other careers. So we really should be rethinking that term. Kathy, go ahead.
Kelly, thanks for your presentation. I was really interested in your discussion on skill building, outside of your own research project. And what I was very interested in was that you talked about your practicums and your public health program, and that it was a group of 10 students, I think you said, who were part of the learning how to do meta-analyses, systematic reviews. Is that right?
Yeah.
Was that, now I kind of want to know the logistics of that. Was that a class, or was that completely student run?
Student run.
Really? So you all
Yeah.
then kind of came up with your own curriculum, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It was, it's kind of, Jopna had something similar that, we kind of followed suit. Was, we kind of saw it as something that, was a need. It was a skill that we needed. And then also when you're doing a systematic review, you end up with a lot of studies. For that particular one, we had around 9,000 studies, 9,000 publications that you have to screen through for eligibility. It's a lot of manual, I call it manual labor. It's a lot of man hours that you need. So you kind of need a crew to do it efficiently. And, I was kind of expecting 3 or 4 other students who would want to jump on board. Some of them did play very integral roles in it, but we had 10 students who expressed interest and saw that something that they wanted in on.
And so did you get credit for this, or was it just purely your own benefit? I'm trying to figure out how to replicate something like that.
Yeah, so for me, it checked one of the boxes I had to meet the competencies of public health. The way that I got other people to hop on board on this, who weren't getting credit, was that our end goal was a publication.
Okay.
And I think just the desire for the skills or the desire for a publication on their resume motivated these other students to want to join.
Nice. Are there postdocs on that kind of thing, on doing a systematic review, learning how, learning how to, or even big data, learning how to use big data,
Oh, whether they're like postdocs?
Yeah. Did you ever look into that? Or I'm just curious, would that be another way to skill build, to find a postdoc that was in something a little different?
I mean, you definitely could. Especially at the NHANES, there's people who just do NHANES, so definitely could do a postdoc within that. But really, my job in consulting, at least once a week, we were having a different sort of systematic review.
Wow.
Whether it was for health claim substantiation or adverse health consequences.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, daily basis, screening through
Sure.
papers.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, one last question. How many projects do you juggle at one time? Is your role more like a primary investigator or more like a research coordinator?
So at Exponent, 5 projects at once. It's a lot of work. To be honest with you, you're juggling a lot of things. You have a team working on these projects, so it's usually kind of like, I'll do this, pass it off to someone. They do a quality check. I mean, like everyone's checking everyone's work. That's something I didn't really speak too much on, but But in industry, there's a lot of quality assurance that occurs that doesn't always occur in academia. You know, anytime I did a line of code, someone was checking it. Anytime I, did anything, someone checks it, because we all make mistakes, no matter how good you are. So that was about 5 projects. On my government position, it's much smaller workload. Like right now I'm working on 3 projects, but I get to go into nitty-gritty detail on those 3 things. You want to kind of keep a pipeline going. I serve much more of a kind of the study design role than bench, once I'm back in the office, than a benchtop role. But you need to have like a research pipeline just as you would in academia. So it's kind of, you always kind of have a couple things percolating, either starting or ending or in between.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I think I got through all the questions, but I'll forward you some if the students have more questions. This is really, I'm sure the students found this very helpful, but even for, someone like me, a hardcore academic, this is really insightful and interesting to know. If you all could just unmute your mics, and let's give Dr. Higgins a round of applause, please.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Kelly.
That was wonderful.
Thank you. That was really helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was great.
I'll follow up later. Thanks, Kelly.
All right, thanks.
Can I hang on for just a second though? For a moment. Hi, this is Jennifer Bean. I'm one of Dr. Peterson's grad students right now. And I think I probably had you in Lifespan when you were a student because I've been teaching for a while.
Okay.
I would really enjoy the opportunity to set up a time to Zoom with you and talk about